Welcome back to BadgerBlitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. I'm Matt Perkins, joined once again by BadgerBlitz.com publisher and editor-in-chief, John McNamara. Great to see you as always, buddy.
Good to see you too, Matt.
All right, John. Badgers coming out of a bye week with number one Oregon coming to town this weekend. Depth chart has been released, and there are no changes, despite the clamoring of many of folk outside of the program. Where does this team stand heading into, one of the biggest games, if not the biggest game of the year?
That's a good question. I don't know that there's many that anticipate Wisconsin will win on Saturday against number one Oregon. That looks like, maybe the most complete, well-rounded team in the country. Wisconsin is certainly not coming off a very good showing against Iowa, and the same Iowa team that, went to UCLA and got beat up pretty good there. So that doesn't look like make Wisconsin's loss look any better. I guess my takeaway from that, to kind of get off on a little tangent, that it's just college football it seems to be resembling the NFL in a lot of ways, and now you see that in very week to week league. Maybe not with the Oregons of the world that win every single week, but just because a team looks like this one week, they are not guaranteed to look that way the following week. You saw a team like Rutgers beat, Minnesota, and there's a lot of those examples throughout this college football season. So I'm not saying that a new week gets Wisconsin to compete with Oregon, but you look down the schedule a little bit more and you see Nebraska and Minnesota. I think those seem to be the games that fans are more locked into. Not that everyone's just kind of chalking this up as a loss, but it just there doesn't seem to be a scenario where Wisconsin is A, competitive, or B, can take out Oregon on Saturday night in Madison.
And Phil Longo talked about this week in the press conference that there's no change coming at quarterback because maybe Matoyer is not ready, and so that kind of sparks the question, like, what is the future at this position? Because it's been back-to-back years of suboptimal quarterback play in Madison between Mordecai, Locke, and then obviously Van Dyke with his injury. So what's the quarterback situation? I guess it's just as big of a question as where the program's at right now, because they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, and this is the hottest topic currently, and I would imagine it's going to be that way through the regular season and into the off season, as long as it kind of goes, because so much hinges on Phil Longo, right? And, people that listen to us and people that are on our message boards love the recruiting talk, and everything, like I said, recruiting, current roster has a lot to do with Phil Longo and his future there. And, some people thought that Luke Fickell would potentially make a move during the bye week. I said that was likely not coming. The biggest reason, because he gives you the best chance to win your next three games, and like we talked about Oregon, that doesn't need to be talked about again. But I think Phil Longo and his play calling and his system and the guys being familiar with that give you the best chance to compete and potentially beat Minnesota, and the same thing with Nebraska. So Phil still being there is not surprising. Maybe Mettauer not being ready, according to Phil Longo, is not entirely surprising, because that's really the feel that we've had throughout this entire fall. And obviously we don't get to see practices and stuff like that, but as much as it might pain Wisconsin fans to hear, Braden Locke in this particular season with 3 games remaining gives you the best chance to win. And I don't think it's very close. And fans can point to the interceptions and this and the limitations. He gives you the best chance to win these last 3 games and potentially a bowl game. And that could be completely different in just a couple weeks with the portal and everything that goes into college football. But right now, that is your best option to win these games.
I mean, I would happen to agree with that, because I don't think firing Phil Longo at this point accomplishes anything. No. At this point in the year. It's just it's just not a good decision, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. So you can take it or leave it there. But we talk about the future at quarterback, and there's been a lot of buzz around Carter Smith, the former Michigan commit who decommitted recently and will be taking a visit to Madison. So where do things stand with the 4-star Carter Smith, and what does his weekend look like, and sort of where does he stand, and where his relationships at, I guess?
Yeah, this has been an interesting one to follow for a while. If you are on the Badgers Den, if you're in and you're up and running and you read all the posts, this was a name that was brought up really early in this 2025 recruiting cycle. And, just because, guys that post on our message board who are kind of tied into things down in Florida. And he was brought up as a kid that, he was looking to be recruited by Wisconsin. This was before he kind of blew up. And things happened for him really quickly. And at the same time, his recruitment started to really heat up. Wisconsin took an early commitment from Landon Locke, obviously Braden Locke's younger brother. That was in the summer before his junior year, I believe, where Wisconsin got him locked up. A guy like Carter Smith goes and he sees his recruitment explode. He makes an early commitment to Michigan. And then just in the last, maybe month, 4 weeks or so, Michigan starts to make a big financial push to a big 5-star quarterback, and everything that goes into that. And Carter Smith kind of gets wind of that in his camp, and they back away from that commitment. A lot of schools start to get involved. One being Wisconsin. Pat Lambert, Max Steinecker, both made it out there last Thursday to see him play. But during that time, Georgia was there, Clemson was there, Kentucky was there. A lot of schools wanted to see what his status was and how he could potentially fit into their recruiting classes. And right now it's very much Wisconsin and Florida State. Florida State had a recent decommitment at the quarterback position, so they are working hard to try to keep him inside the state. But that's a program that has more going on than Wisconsin does in terms of what the future looks like and everything that goes into that. So the expectation is that, I guess not the expectation, but the feeling I get is that if everything goes as planned, that there's a good chance that he commits to Wisconsin during his visit this weekend. I'm kind of being told that this family's been through the recruiting process. They had a home, they had a fit that they felt like they were ready to roll with. This is a kid who's going to enroll for the spring, so they don't want to go through it all again and go through every single thing. I mean, they want to find a good fit. There's a really strong, they feel really good about Luke Fickell, being the head of that program. So I would not be surprised if things move quickly this weekend and Carter Smith joined Wisconsin's 2025 recruiting class, which for me is to get a 4-star kid at that position this late in the cycle is absolutely best case scenario. And a guy like Landon Locke, he's hurt right now. He's another guy who plans to enroll early. I don't know what that changes with him, but you take Carter Smith and try to keep Landon Locke, and if something moves on his end, then I guess so be it. But adding 2 guys to the position in this cycle, I think is huge for Wisconsin moving forward. And not to get too far ahead, but I think they should do the same thing in 2026.
I don't see any reason why not. Speaking of those 2026s, a couple interesting recruits coming in this weekend for the game. Ben Nichols, just as of this morning, it looks like he is going to be coming in. He's a pretty big time offensive tackle out of Michigan. Tayshon Bardo is another name to keep an eye on, in my opinion, out of Indiana. But what strikes you for the commits that they'll have, or the commits, I should say, the recruits they'll have in town, outside obviously of the big name of Carter Smith?
Yeah, that I talked to someone yesterday, and that list is still very much in flux. So I hesitate to put every kid that I hear, because I talked to someone yesterday. They said, "Hey, we had 4 cancel and we added 2," and they expect that right up until Thursday. So the list that I'll provide on Thursday should be a lot more concrete, and you can look for that at, on BadgerBlitz.com as soon as that's made available to me. So there's a lot of movement. With this game time, it's going to allow more kids to come in. Wisconsin doesn't want to bring in 100 kids, right? I mean, they want to get the kids that they want to spend time with, and those high priority kids. Obviously, you're bringing in a guy like Carter Smith. Maybe there are other 2025 kids who show up as well. So it'll be a really nice opportunity for Wisconsin to showcase another, night game at Camp Randall. I don't know how much you want to have those guys sit through the game, probably through jump around, maybe get them out and safely somewhere else after that. But, if it's a, exciting 4-quarter game, then it should be a great atmosphere for those recruits in attendance. So I expect a pretty healthy list, maybe not as big as Penn State, but there's going to be some important guys there, specifically for, kind of 2026 and beyond, I would expect.
So I think some of the guys that they actually, I would imagine if they get some of the 2025 in-state kids up for Carter Smith and, bring those guys in for, another unofficial, because it's pretty easy for some of those guys to get over, because also more of them are being knocked out of the playoffs in the state of Wisconsin. John, it was upset city this weekend, this past weekend in the WIAA playoffs. What was the most shocking loss for you? I mean, it's got to be Marquette, right?
Yeah, the team I told you to bet all your money on, Marquette. They get bounced by Bayport, which, look, it's a really, really strong program, probably one of the strongest programs over the last, 20 years or so. I mean, I don't want to backtrack. It was certainly a surprising loss, but a team like Bayport, they've been there, they've had the experience. They had got some dudes on both sides of the ball, and obviously they, I don't know if pre-convincing is the right word, but they went and beat a good Marquette team, and that's a Marquette team like I talked about. I thought was going to win state this year. So, they come and they're going to play DC Everest coming up. And then, you look on the other side of the bracket, you have two schools that are pretty familiar with each other, not too far away from each other. And that'll be another matchup between Muskego and Mukwonago. So, pretty good matchup in that D1 field. But like you said, Matt, certainly some upsets that came along the way.
How about 7 seed DC Everest making it to the Final Four? I mean, that's pretty incredible. They've had quite the run here.
Yeah, and like you said, a 7 seed. But then you look at the record. I think they came in with just 2 losses, so they have beat some really good programs. And they went to Waunakee last week, yep. And they won that game. That's another one of those. Hey, what's the best program in the last 20 years, 30 years in the state? And Waunakee's right up there with a lot of those other schools that we've talked about. So that team is, I would imagine, I don't know, I don't have any DC Everest contacts right now, but that's a team that certainly feels like they can get to Madison, because they beat some really good teams along the way, and they'll play Bayport with a chance to get to Camp Randall.
Well, my Verona pick and your Marquette pick are now out. We've got 4 left. Where are you going?
Man, I got a chance to see Mukwonago. If they can get by a really tough, scrappy type of Muskego team now that's kind of rolling on all cylinders, and that's a tough team to play. Mukwonago would probably be my pick. They're really good up front. They can run the football. They got a big tight end that they can go to. The defense is really solid. I hope it's not the kiss of death for Mukwonago if I pick them. But they from that Final Four, I think I put my money on them right now.
It's a toss-up for me between them and Bayport, and I think I'll take Bayport just coming off of such a big win. Now, you worry about a letdown a little bit, but I think that they've clearly got, to be cliche, their eyes on the prize here. And so to be a little bit different, I'll take Bayport. Maybe both of them will now have the kiss of death, and Muskego, and DC Everest will continue will continue on their magical run. We hope that you continue on with us here at Badger Blitz. Make sure you head on over to the website and are subscribing for the best Badger content anywhere around. Get in on the action in the Badger's Den as well, the best message boards you can find. We appreciate everyone tuning in, liking, subscribing, and doing all that fun stuff. And thank you, John. And until next time, we'll see you in the den.